Hello internet users and welcome back to another video. As a big fan of RPG Maker projects, people have often asked me about my thoughts on Yume Nikki. For those that have never heard of it, Yume Nikki is a weird exploration game where you wander around a girl's dreams, coming across all sorts of surreal and interesting sights. Since the game's release, there have been a ton of different fan games and other projects that drew inspiration from it. It's to the point where you could just call something a Yume Nikki game, and there would be lots of people that would know exactly what you mean. Yume Nikki has quite a legacy behind it, and I'd even say that I get just as many requests to talk about the games it's influenced as I do to talk about the original itself. But with all of that being said, even though I was fully aware of the massive popularity, these types of games are something that I've just never gotten around to playing for a long time. This year though, I finally got the chance to play through and experience what the original Yume Nikki has to offer, and today I want to finally give my thoughts on it. Just a quick note though, like I say with a lot of these weird games I play, the original Yume Nikki is available online for free to try for yourself if you haven't already. As well, there is the 2018 commercial Reimagining that you can go and buy on most platforms now. That one is a little different, and I'll also be talking more about that particular game later on. So with that stuff out of the way, let's all take a look at the crazy dream world that started it all. Yume Nikki starts you out in the main character's bedroom. There is no intro cutscene or any kind of story given to you. All you know is that this character's name is Motosuke. You're unable to leave your room, and trying to do so will only make Motosuke shake her head. You can step out into the balcony, but there isn't anything you can do out here. To really get started, you first need to hop into the bed and go to sleep. Like I said, this game is all about exploring dreams, and if you weren't already aware, the title Yume Nikki literally translates from Japanese as Dream Diary. Once asleep, Motosuke will arrive in another version of her bedroom. This time she is now able to open the door to the outside. From here, the game presents you with a room full of doors called the Nexus, each of which will lead you to a different dream world. Some of them can look pretty straightforward, like the snow world for example, but then there are the stranger ones where it's a little difficult to describe what it is you're even looking at. Most of these worlds are pretty open areas without any boundaries. In fact, if you wander too far in any direction, you'll loop back around on the opposite side of the map. As soon as you start exploring the different doors from the Nexus, you're more than likely going to be really confused and a bit overwhelmed. There is clearly so much available at the start, and you aren't given much indication of what you're actually supposed to do. But honestly, I think that works really well with what the game is trying to accomplish. Even though the worlds look so spacious and empty, because of all the wild imagery and atmospheric music, you immediately get the impression that this very lonely world has something hidden somewhere if you look hard enough. Being directionless can be annoying when a game wants you to do something specific, but in the case of Yume Nikki, it's very clear that you're meant to feel lost and discover things for yourself. This isn't the kind of game where you're meant to run from place to place, checking off a list of objectives. The full experience is just to wander and take in all of the sights and sounds. For me, this game reminds me of what I find appealing about modern art museums. I get to look around at my own pace, discovering pieces of art, or in this game's case, worlds, that are incredibly different from each other. Every piece is clearly expressing something, but it's never exactly clear what the meaning really is. There is no right or wrong answer to tell you how to interpret what you see. You're not meant to feel something specific, you're just meant to feel something as you take a look around. I know many people nowadays would say that that sort of design philosophy for indie games is pretty pretentious, but I think that's a pretty closed-minded way of looking at things. Anyway, what obviously separates Yume Nikki from an art museum, however, is the fact that a museum has several different works from several different artists, while this game was made entirely by one person. Because all of these worlds are tied together within the dreams of this one character, you can't help but think about each of their meanings even more. It should come as no surprise that there are countless fan theories about these worlds, and what they represent about Motosuke. Perhaps the things you're seeing are distorted representations of our feelings and memories. Some places could even be tied to a type of trauma, while others could be related to a nostalgic memory. Some of them really could just be meaningless altogether. Again, there's no right or wrong answers here, just like with real dreams, and that's why I think this game executes its concept very well. But anyway, with all of that being said, there is still technically a goal that the player can work towards, and that is by collecting all of the game's various effects. Usually there isn't much to gain from trying to interact with the environment, but sometimes doing so will give Motosuke a new ability. For example, using the lamp effect will turn her head into a lamp and light up dark places. The umbrella effect will cause it to rain, and the bike effect allows you to move around much faster. You can actually find the bike pretty early on, and trust me, once you do, you'll be using it at all times. Motosuke's normal walking speed is really slow, and with how big some of these worlds can be, you're going to want to get around much faster. In total, there are 24 effects that you can find. Unfortunately, nearly all of these are pretty much useless and don't serve any real purpose other than being something to collect. For example, one of them turns Motosuke blonde, and another turns her into an Oni, and that's pretty much it. You can't even use the bike while these effects are enabled either, so you won't even be tempted to walk around using them as alternate costumes or something. However, there is one effect that does way more things than any of the others, and that one is the kitchen knife. Equipping this thing will allow Motosuke to stab almost everything in the game. The knife is perhaps one of the most mysterious and iconic things about this game. It's never really needed for progress, and there isn't any good reason for attacking any of the NPCs. But with that being said, it's somewhat unsettling how so many of the one-off visuals you come across have specific changes when they're attacked this way. As well, most NPCs will let out a scream, some of which will even try to back away from you, clearly fearing for their life. The fact that this knife can do so much in the dream worlds while the other effects do little to nothing really highlights its significance. Because there isn't any dialogue in this game, it's the little things like this that get you thinking about what Motosuke is really like. Is she so willing to wield a knife like this because she feels threatened by something? Or is it because she's a really violent person? Maybe even a combination of both. This is something about this game that really gets discussed a lot, and it's little details like this that I really enjoy seeing in games. Anyways, at any point inside of the dreams, you can press a key that will instantly wake Motosuke up. It's essentially a quick way to get yourself back to the Nexus whenever you get lost. However, there are some instances when you'll be trapped in certain locations, and you'll have absolutely no choice but to wake yourself up. While you can't be killed in this game, there are a few hostile NPCs that, when grabbed by, will transport you to an enclosed area that can't be escaped otherwise. Now next, I want to talk about just how much there is in this game to find. In the Nexus, excluding the door to Motosuke's room, there are 12 different dream doors. At first you might think that this means that there are only 12 different themed areas to take a look at, but that couldn't be further from the truth. When exploring the worlds that the doors take you to, you'll come across many entrances to other places. A lot of the different dreams are connected to each other, often having more than one way for reaching certain places, making the game feel like one gigantic maze. Within my first hour of playing this game, I started to feel like I had already seen everything that there was to see. But then I had found out that there were many more worlds that I had yet to visit. For example, there is an entire dream where everything, including Motosuke, appears in NES-style graphics, and it looks very cool. I especially like how even your menu changes here too. However, one of the most memorable things about it for me is how it acts as an unsettling entrance to another area. You see, when you go very deep into this world, eventually the music will fade out, and you'll notice that the color of things will start to disappear. You'll then enter what is known as the White Desert. This is a very eerie looking and sounding place that stands out from the rest of the game. You can hear some slight noises in the background, followed by a sniffing sound every few seconds. Now, Yume Nikki isn't meant to be a horror game, and this place isn't exactly terrifying, but the sudden shift in tone this place has really put me on edge the first time I was here. Honestly though, the sniffing noise really starts to get annoying after like a couple of minutes. Now this isn't the only instance of the game getting creepy. In fact, some of the most iconic things in Yume Nikki are its few horrifying moments. Many of these things are left up to chance, whether or not you will see them happen. I think the one that's left the biggest impression on people is the Uboa event. To see this event, you need to first go to the Pink Sea. In this place, interacting with these balloons will warp you around. Eventually, you can get yourself to this little island here, which is home to an NPC named Poniko. When you first enter the house, nothing seems too weird, it just seems like a normal room with a normal looking character. The only thing you can interact with is the light switch, which will cause the music and visuals to change a bit. However, when entering into this particular map, the game actually has a 1 in 64 chance of preparing something else for the player when they turn off the lights. The screen will start to shake, the music will turn unsettling, and Poniko will be replaced with Uboa. You can no longer exit through the door you just came in, and all you can do is let Uboa transport you to this very eerie location. This place is referred to as Uboa's Trap. No matter how far you move, you'll be stuck in a never-ending loop. All the while, this freaky visual in the background will be present. There isn't anything else the player can do here, so you're pretty much just forced to wake yourself up. Similar to Uboa, there is another random chance of finding something in the number world. Whenever Motosuke falls asleep, the game determines whether or not this particular spot has an unhappy expression. By using the knife here, when it isn't happy, it will open to reveal a door. Once inside, the background music will stop, and as you move forward, you'll come across this red jelly thing. He doesn't do anything except sit there, rubbing the railing. It's pretty uncomfortable to look at, honestly, especially because of the lack of music here. At the top of these stairs, there is a door that looks like the same one in Motosuke's room. Upon entering, there will suddenly be this thing in your face. Motosuke will then be forcefully awoken in her room, like she just had a nightmare. What I like about these two events is that there's such a drastic shift from the other things seen in the game, and are clearly meant to be found by accident. Because of how old and popular this game is, it's very easy to just look everything up on a wiki, but back when this was new, imagine discussing this with other people. Say you and your friends had all just played through the game and were sharing some of your favorite moments. Imagine how freaky it might be to have someone tell you about either of these two events when you and the rest of the group thought you had already seen everything you could. It's mysterious stuff like this that keeps people intrigued, even when they've already quote-unquote completed the game. It's similar to how we're all fascinated with discovering new Easter eggs in our favorite series years down the line. Anyway, when it comes to Yume Nikki's hidden events, these two are no doubt the biggest. Honestly though, I feel like this game could use some more of them on this scale. Yume Nikki's dream world is huge, and sometimes the rest of the random occurrences can feel pretty few and far between, even after I looked up or was told about what all of them are. Unfortunately, sometimes an area can actually be just as empty as it really seems. Yume Nikki wants you to wander around and discover so many different things for yourself, which it does very well. The downside of a game like that, though, is that the amount of people that are going to find everything with no help at all is very small. You're definitely going to get a little confused and frustrated trying to figure out how to get those last few effects. There isn't anything wrong with that, but it can take away some of the magic when you need to look up specific directions and use maps to get to those dream worlds you've yet to find. But despite that, this is still most definitely a pretty great game, and I enjoyed it all the way through. And now for a moment, I just want to briefly comment on the ending of the game. I know that everyone watching this isn't going to bother playing it for themselves, but if you'd rather skip over hearing about this, there is a timestamp on screen to tell you what part of the video to go to. Alright, so like I said before, in order to get the ending, you need to find all 24 hidden effects throughout the game. After that, what you're supposed to do next isn't exactly clear. In the Nexus, and only in the Nexus, you can actually equip an effect and then drop it in this room in the shape of an egg. It doesn't seem like this accomplishes anything, but once all of them have been dropped, something in the game will have changed. The next time you wake up, you will find that there is now something out on Motosuke's balcony. She is now able to jump off, falling to her death and triggering the game's credits. It's such a small scene and may not seem like much on its own, but again, it's one of the many things about this game that makes you think and consider the significance of all that you've seen up to this point. The fact that Motosuke decided to do something so horrible is why many people speculate how a lot of the things you come across in her dreams are related to fear and trauma. People who really enjoyed the game naturally would want to know why Motosuke did what she did. There is obviously a tragic story here behind the events that led up to this moment, but the only thing that tells you anything about that story is what you see in her dreams, and I think that's a very interesting way to show things. Anyways, at this point, now that I've talked about the original, I think now is a good time to shift gears and start talking about the 2018 Reimagining. So during my time experiencing the original Yume Nikki, at the back of my mind, I was getting more and more curious about what the new game was like. I remember that there was some buzz about it a while back. Yume Nikki's original creator, Kikiyama, was involved, and apparently people weren't even sure that this person was alive until this game was announced. But I wasn't really paying too much attention beyond that though. Unfortunately, as I was making plans to play it, I had many people tell me that it wasn't very good. Even the Steam page showed that there was some mixed reception here. Despite this though, I still wanted to give it a fair shot. I mean, this is a beloved property coming back after a long time. Maybe people were just a bit harsh and set their expectations too high. With that in mind, let's take a look and see what it's all about. The game is titled Yume Nikki Dream Diary. Yeah, not exactly the most imaginative idea, but I guess it at least makes it easier for someone unfamiliar with the game to get a better idea of what it's about. Like before, you play as Motosuke, the shut-in that refuses to leave her room. By going to the bed, you can enter the dream world. Once inside of the Nexus, you'll find that instead of 12 doors, there are now only 7, one of which is actually locked until later on. Going into one door, I find a new area that wasn't in the original. This time, instead of wandering around a huge map, your goal here is to continue moving to the right while avoiding obstacles. There are some creepy looking sights that I like here. You have these red-eyed dolls that kill you if you get in their line of sight. There are these eyeballs rolling around trying to trip you. And then there are these giant arms reaching out of the alleyways. And I, just pop back into existence after that one grabbed me. Okay. After moving far enough into this place, there is a point where a giant swarm of the eyeballs starts chasing you. You need to run fast, but along the way, there is a collectible you can pick up. This game has a bunch of these scattered around, and you can... What happened here? Okay, that was weird, but I'm sure if I get back to the same spot, then I'll... So I don't know why, but now every time that I reach the blob of eyeballs, the screen immediately cuts to black and registers me as dead. This wouldn't stop happening, so I had no choice but to exit to the title screen and reload my save. Alright, fine, whatever, I replay the whole area, and this time, the eyeballs function properly and I can finish the stage. By the way, there is also this creepy shadow that chases you here, and that's a pretty awkward animation. I think I'm beginning to see why this game is disliked so much. So as you move forward, you'll come across some items or effects, and also realize that the different dream worlds are connected in some ways, like in the original. Each area, however, is pretty linear for the most part. There are points, though, where paths can split off, and you'll need to come back to certain spots with a key or something. Some places play a bit different than each other. You'll have areas like the sewers where everything is in a top-down view, areas like the docks that are a 2D puzzle platforming section, and then there is the block world, where you have to do some 3D platforming. And sure, it might seem cool to see different sections with different forms of gameplay implemented, but the problem is, a lot of them are not implemented in the best of ways. Motosuke does not control like she was designed to do any platforming. As a result, a lot of these sections feel kind of clunky. I wouldn't call them broken or unfair, but I wouldn't call them all that fun either. Even when you get the umbrella effect for the block world, it still feels a bit off for this character to be moving around like this. Something that I also really have to say I don't like about this game is the varying degrees of quality it has with its visuals and creativity. Some areas look okay, while others look pretty bland. Almost like they didn't have time to give everything the same level of polish. Motosuke herself also doesn't look very well modeled or animated. There are also a few parts that I feel like were thrown in for the sake of padding. The biggest example of this is the mannequin warehouse. Among some of the new areas this game has to offer is a 2D platforming section that takes place in this warehouse, where mannequins creep towards you whenever the lights flicker off. Once you reach the end, there is this part where Motosuke lays in bed, and then the game gives this really predictable jump scare where the mannequins are suddenly surrounding her. This is a very lame section if you ask me. It's such a generic horror trope and feels so out of place in this game. It's like you've suddenly wandered into a college student's first Unity horror project. I'm not saying that mannequins can't be creepy or anything, but most of the time when they're used in the games this way, it just feels like so the developers didn't have to animate much. I thought the street at the beginning was a much more interesting new area. The symbolism with the eyeballs and the gazing dolls was pretty cool. It makes me wonder if this place represents a fear within Motosuke. We all know she doesn't want to go outside, so maybe she's terrified at the thought of strangers staring at her in public. Maybe the giant hands reaching out are a part of that and relate to some kind of traumatic memory. But after that, the game just kind of runs out of steam. Of course, there are lots of adaptations of areas from the original, but whenever I try and see it introduce something new, it feels very bland and I'm just not into it. Overall, you can easily tell that this game didn't exactly have the biggest budget in the world. Aside from everything not exactly looking the best, I found it to be pretty glitchy too. It wasn't just the eyeballs that made me have to reload a save. When I was doing something in this room, Motosuke suddenly ran off screen to the left and could no longer be controlled. This wasn't an issue with my controller either. The game wouldn't let me do anything aside from open the menu. Another time, when I was trying to lure this thing into a cage as a part of a puzzle, I failed and got caught. However, when I spawned back into the map, the thing I was supposed to lure had gotten stuck in a wall. For a game that relies heavily on atmosphere, getting this many glitches was pretty crippling to the experience. I think I remember hearing that the devs were apparently on top of patching the game when it came out, but I played this over a year after release, so I don't know what the deal is here. The whole game is also very short and can be finished in like 1 or 2 sittings, so these moments where I was forced to exit to the title screen weren't very far apart from each other. Maybe I'm just unlucky though, because I haven't heard too much complaints about glitches being a contributing factor to its reception. To talk about something positive though, one idea that I really liked was what they did with Motosuke's desk. You no longer use the notebook here to save, but instead can take a look at it. Inside, there are a bunch of little sketches of things that you've encountered inside of the dream world. This is, of course, her dream diary, and I did think it was cool to see it fill up as you progressed. You can also take a look at some of the concept art here too, after you pick it up somewhere while exploring. Assuming that the game doesn't glitch when you do that though. The concept art is easily my favorite thing in this entire package. It's really nice looking, and I love the style so much. It really fits the spirit of Yume Nikki very well. But when it comes to the rest of the actual game though, I feel like the core design here is severely lacking. While there are puzzle platforming sections, this is mainly an adventure game where you need to find a few different items and abilities to let yourself move forward at different points. However, all around, I think everything here feels done in a very basic way, and I think that might be my biggest problem with the whole thing. At its best, Yume Nikki Dream Diary is a very safe and average game. It doesn't take any risks and just kind of does the bare minimum for what it is. It's really kind of a shame because there are some neat ideas here. I'm not trying to say that they didn't want to make a good game, but it doesn't seem like this project was given the time or money it needed. If it wasn't for the fact that this had Yume Nikki in the title, I don't think very many people would have even given it a second glance. Not a whole lot here sticks out as memorable, and many portions even feel like they were just following a formula without any unique twists on the ideas. You know, I hear a lot of talk that many people think the negativity surrounding this game is unjustified, that people are just upset because they went in expecting an experience that was more close to the original. Like I said before though, looking at this as a standalone game, it's not all that impressive. But if they're going to make a big deal out of having profound respect towards the original work, then they are absolutely begging for comparisons to be made. And that was Yume Nikki and Yume Nikki Dream Diary. I definitely would recommend checking out the original. Its experimental nature has left a big impact on the world of indie games and is still continuing to do so to this day. The reimagining though is unfortunately pretty underwhelming. It's not awful, but it isn't anything amazing either. I wouldn't recommend against playing it, but I would definitely say that you should wait for it to go on sale. Whether you think its ideas work or not, I think its length and level of polish do not make it worth spending very much money on. My name is Pikasprey, and thanks for watching.